Welcome to an all-new episode of the Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. This is Corey Richmond, joined by Jason Brooks. Jason, this isn't going to be our usual happy-go-lucky episode of, killing the WWE for their handling of the coronavirus. The wrestling world was basically shocked to its core Wednesday afternoon with a former guest of the program, David Starr, with allegations of misconduct of a former girlfriend, of possible rape, and that was only the beginning. Since then, basically, the UK wrestling scene has been taken by storm by allegations to many of its biggest stars, and even people stateside like Dave Lagana, and there's been allegations towards Jim Cornette and many others. Jay, it's a weird way to transition, but how are you doing today?
Yeah, it's Juneteenth. For those of you guys who don't know, it's when the last slaves were freed. So it's kind of I don't want to say a kind of a celebration, kind of a recognition of the slaves being freed and what that means for us as African American people. So I'm kind of trying to celebrate that a little bit, having a nice beverage. Supported a couple of Black businesses. Spent the day with my wife. But yeah, no, this is, the David Starr thing, it was like a match that was lit, right? And it's just, listen, we had him on the show a couple weeks ago. A lot of you guys know this. He was a tremendous guest, maybe the best guest we've ever had on the show. It was a great conversation. There's a lot of things that we talked about that I have in common with him in terms of how he views politics, how he views, his thoughts on unionizing wrestling. And we can get into the particulars with the woman who, basically said that he was an asshole to her and a terrible boyfriend, but then also said that he indicated to her that he had sexually assaulted, raped a woman, not her specifically, but another woman. And he's no longer with a bunch of entities. And he's kind of said on Twitter, my career, might be over. And if that's okay, if that's it, that's okay. And then that started all these other things. And we've had two statements from the WWE about one guy. And we got Devlin, we've got Travis Banks, we've got Lagana, we got Jimmy Havoc. So I want to make this clear. We're going to talk about these cases. I don't know, one by one. We'll see. These are all accusations. Now, there's a lot of accusations. So generally, when you have a lot of accusations, that's a lot of people. That'd be a lot of people lying. So basically saying, yeah, when there's smoke, there's fire, right? So there's got to be truth to some of these things. So it's going to be interesting going into this and figuring it out. But I want to be clear that all these are accusations. There's no one's been prosecuted, no one's been convicted, no one's been arrested. Some of these instances, I think the Lagana one was from 2010, right? So there's a lot of different things that are going on here. Right. Yeah, so we'll be as sensitive to it as possible, but we want to report what's happening for you guys.
Yeah, and so I guess just start right from the top with David Starr. Give credit to OTT, Rev Pro, TNT, all different companies that he worked for. Progress. They all stripped him of the title and got rid of him right away. They took decisive action. When he was on the show, we hyped up and promoted the podcast he was on, We the Independent. They immediately went and severed ties. They're going to continue on. And one of the things I did with our last episode, the Big Veto Part 2, which everyone can check out, I went and put something at the very end of the episode saying, we do not, of course, support, if these things are true, we do not support what David Starr allegedly did, but we still do support the idea of wrestlers' independence, with their being unionized and everything else. So we support why he came on the show in the first place. But of course, if these actions are true, we vehemently, are against the things that he's accused of. But, like I said, We the Independent is still going strong, trying to unionize and do the best for wrestlers out there. But all of these people that very strongly went and moved away from him. And like you said, his career is more than likely over. And he came out right away and said he is. I mean, he said, he was a dickhead as a boyfriend, but this isn't true. And, that's what makes all of these things are going to be very hard to talk about right now because, of course, no one's going to go out and say that they did this and basically say, yeah, I'm a rapist, I'm an abuser and all these things. But with the David Starr one, which is slightly interesting, is the idea that he said, yeah, I was a shithead boyfriend. I did some terrible things, but I did not cross that line. So it makes
also the woman is not saying that he was horrible to her as a boyfriend. That's not necessarily a crime necessarily, right? But there's emotionally abusive things that are, basically you're kind of an immoral person. And there's other things. And then she said that he raped someone else. So that's a big deal. Big deal.
Absolutely. And like I said, hashtag speak out is going to be
speaking out
is going to be a big thing over the next, couple of days, couple of weeks. You don't know how long that is going to be the vocal point of what we cover, as a podcast right now. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what other things come out, how WWE and all these companies handle this. But like I said, I'm giving credit to Progress Wrestling, who went and immediately, anybody who there was even an accusation, they suspended, where they went, Jordan Devlin, who's their tag team champion, they went and just said, you're suspended, we're stripping you the title. When we know more information, we'll do something else. But right now, you're basically a black eye to our company. We cannot have you here.
And the thing about all these cases, a lot of these cases is, there is a statute of limitations on sexual assault, I believe.
Sure.
These things can be very, very difficult to prove. And so, we're probably not going to get a lot of arrests. That's probably not going to be something that happens. I think what would happen is with certain guys like Matt Riddle, which we can get into, because there's two statements. WWE made two statements in one day about it. So with the Matt Riddle thing, for instance, right? If maybe this goes away, who knows? He has some counterclaim about this woman. And like I said, we'll get into that in a minute. But if one of these guys, instead of having one woman say this, they have multiple women say this, kind of like the Harvey Weinstein thing or the Charlie Rose thing back in the day, where it wasn't one woman who said, oh, he, got handsy with me or whatever, right? It was multiple women saying that they were sexually harassing them. I think that's when a company like the WWE would they'd have no choice, right? There'd be too much stuff. So I think that's going to be, going to be kind of what happens in some of these cases. Jordan Devlin, same thing. I don't think the WWE I don't know what they're doing with him at the moment. So, that's where I think things get a little bit. And then some companies are like, forget it, like Progress. We're just, we're done with it, which I totally respect too. So it's a very, very complicated thing. And also, for these women who, are accusing these men, if these women were assaulted, it's awful. It's an awful, awful, awful thing. And it's awful that these guys did this, if they did. And they should be held accountable. They should be fired. They shouldn't be able to work in a public sphere. They should be arrested, right? So it's just it's a tough thing. And what if they didn't do it? Then how does that look? So it's I get the idea of saying, well, let's get them, let's fire everybody, blah blah blah. And for the most part, I hear you and I get it. But there is that element of we really don't know either way. So it'll be very interesting, you're right, to see where things go and see where things end up.
Yes, and like you said, Matt Riddle is by far the biggest name that we know about at this point. There's other names on this list that are unconfirmed. And of course, none of these are confirmed in regards to it actually happened, but unconfirmed that there's even been an accusation. We've got names like, Will Ospreay, just because he's British, has mysteriously, entered some list, So, there are certain names that we know for sure because they've been suspended by companies, but there are other ones that they're just people throwing out names, like I said,
Yeah.
because they.
Yeah, and I think we should get away from on this podcast. We should not name any names of just rampant speculation unless an accuser actually says it. So the name we just mentioned, I don't want to mention anyone's name unless we read somewhere that an accuser actually accused someone of saying something. So I think we have to be careful there too.
And I give and this puts a lot of wrestlers in a weird place. Like Pete Dunne, who's the former tag team partner of Matt Riddle, has been very outspoken over the last, basically the last 2 days in regards where, he said, I didn't know any of this stuff was going on in regards with David Starr, but and now that I know this stuff is going on, this is all super shameful, and this absolutely should not be going on. And he would never, work with, with David Starr again and stuff, and people are taking a hard line, but it makes you wonder when and if, everything goes back to normal with the pandemic and Pete Dunne comes back, how is he going to work with some of these guys now that he's taken this stance, which he absolutely should?
I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be fine. And a lot of these guys may not have jobs and be working anyway, right? So the other thing is he's saying this to be a good guy, to say this is the case. And if enough evidence comes out, if these men are arrested, if whatever, then he may not be working with them anyway. So I think taking a stance like this is taking a stance like this is good. So yeah. So we'll see. But let's get to, I don't know. Let's get to Riddle. He was accused of, there's a woman, and this is really going to be paraphrasing here because I don't have all the information right in front of me. There was a woman, I think it was a couple of years ago, that admitted she was sleeping with him. But he was with her and a couple of people, other wrestlers maybe, I don't know. And I also don't know if that's come out who they were. And essentially, he forced her to, give him oral sex. And so that was what happened. So Corey did put the story up. So I'll kind of read some of it if I can. Like I said, this is the lawyer and stuff like that. So okay. So this is what the woman claims. Ms. Cartwright, back in May of 2018, I was riding with Matt Riddle and a few other wrestlers during the van ride. When the three other wrestlers had fallen asleep, Matt asked me to hop on his dick. When I refused, although we had previously been together, I was incredibly uncomfortable in that setting. Also, isn't he married? When I said no, he grabbed me by the throat, choked me, and said, "What if I just made you?" I ended up giving him oral sex, praying someone wouldn't wake up to get out of having intercourse with them. It was incredibly humiliating. It is never okay to put your hands on a woman, and it is not okay not to listen when she says no. Now, Matt Riddle had his lawyer chime in, and so let's go to that statement. So his lawyer essentially said that this woman's been stalking the Riddle family for the past 2 years. In 2019, our firm had drafted a pleading against this performer to seek an injunction for cyber stalking in Circuit Court of Orange County, Florida. So essentially, he's saying he's not even, I don't even know if he's saying he didn't do it, but he's saying that this woman has been stalking him, cyber stalking him, what have you. WWE made they made a couple of statements, but I'm going to read the second statement because I think it's interesting. The second statement reads as follows. Individuals are responsible for their own personal actions. WWE has zero tolerance for matters involving domestic violence, child abuse, and sexual assault. Upon arrest of such misconduct, a WWE talent will be immediately suspended. Upon conviction for such misconduct, a WWE talent will be immediately terminated. WWE's ability to fine, suspend, or terminate a talent will not be, however, limited or compromised in any manner in the event irrevocable evidence of such illegal misconduct is presented to the WWE. So essentially, if a bunch of women come out and say Matt Riddle did this to me, the WWE probably would have no choice but to fire Riddle. So it's it's totally become a he said she said incident, and it's come down to a thing. And Riddle, I think, is the guy really to talk about here. The David Starr thing, I think, is, we could talk about him more too. But the Riddle thing here is very, very complicated because essentially he's saying this woman's been stalking him, which could hint that this isn't true, which we don't know. So this is a total he said she said. And, we rip the WWE here very regularly. We can name it instead of the Work Shoot podcast, we rip WWE every week podcast. But in this case, they're in a very, very difficult spot. Matt Riddle is supposed to make his debut tonight. They're supposed to make him a big star in SmackDown. He is, as I've said many times, one of my top 5 favorite performers in wrestling right now. I think he's spectacular. At the same time, they have this woman who accused him of something terrible, and him, on the other hand, saying that, she's been stalking him. So if you're the WWE, you're in a really, really tough spot. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago with the Velveteen Dream situation, where there were supposedly videos or messages or pictures or whatever. And we both talked like, what would they do here? And you were like, maybe they should hold off. And I said, no, push forward, because what are we going to do here? And now, several weeks later, we haven't heard anything about it. So I'm not saying that's what you do here, because I think this seems like to be a really different case. So, Corey, I'll just ask you, if you're the WWE, what do you do here? We talked about Jackson Riker too, right? How maybe don't have him on for a couple of weeks. And the Forgotten Sons are not going to be on WWE TV, right? They've been de-pushed, I guess you could say. But in your opinion, what do you do with the WWE here?
I pull them off TV. I almost think this is one of those situations where you have to be. You don't go and say anything to your audience, because then that makes you even look. I think you almost have to keep a little bit of the kayfabe, because it almost just opens up more doors to.
Well, no, you definitely don't say anything to your audience. What would you be saying to them?
What I'm saying is, I don't even think you have to do like an attack angle. Just as something,
Well, he hasn't debuted. You don't have to do anything.
Well, no, I'm saying because he's supposed to debut tonight.
You just don't have to. They could say he's going to debut and then he doesn't debut. WWE, they've had a hacker angle for 2 months that they're not paying off. So they could easily just not put him on and just not say anything.
What was it? Brodus Clay was supposed to debut, I think, like 4 months, and he never did until post WrestleMania or something. So the company, decides to say they're going to bring somebody in, and they never do. So that would be the first time. But that's the first thing. You do not air whatever angle he's supposed to be in tonight. Somewhat semi-spoiler, but the rumors going around he was supposed to do something with AJ Styles tonight in his celebration. So it's going to be interesting to see if that was true, how they edit around that. But they have one of the best editing groups in the world when it comes to WWE. So I'm sure they can figure something out. But take them off TV. I think you got to do, of course, a full investigation. I don't know. This is one of those situations where you go, where I think you got to go and just take them off TV and just do a full investigation.
What are they investigating? They're not hire private investigators, talk to the woman, and what are they gonna investigate? I don't know that this is a thing where they can invest. I know and Corey and I are big fans of the NFL, and the NFL does hire private investigators to look into guys' background in terms of the NFL draft and things that have happened in the past. So that is something that's been done. I don't know if the WWE can do that. I don't know what that would even look like. I guess they could hire a firm to spend money to look into it. But then on the other hand, it might not even be worth it. Like, just fire him. I just don't know what the right maybe just let it play out. Keep him off TV. See what happens. I mean, see what if the legal system takes its course. You know, I mean, I'm not sure. This is building a lot of momentum too. That's the other thing, right? We're talking about the story right now on June 19th, a couple of days after it happened. We don't know what next week's going to look like or what a couple of weeks from now is going to look like. It could be much worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but you know what, I was going to say this initially, when we initially were going to talk, you know, one of the major subjects was going to be an update in regards to how the company was handling COVID testing after, you know, the positive test on Monday. And this company gets, you know, $10 million a week between Fox and USA Network for their television. You're telling me they can't take some of that money and do full investigations into all these claims to people who they're, you know, I know they're all independent contractors, so they're not really employees, but they can't actually do something to make sure the people that they're putting all this stock into in their future and make sure that there actually aren't these problems going on. And maybe this should be something that going into the future, besides just hiring somebody because they're a great athlete, maybe we got to do better background checks on the guys that we're hiring on sports where there's high impact, where there are people who get tons of concussions, who have a better chance of, you know, maybe hire more aggression and everything. I'm not saying that that's the reason why these people.
But Corey, these aren't guys who have been arrested. This isn't like, oh, this guy was arrested and we missed it. This guy beat up a woman and we missed it. This guy was in jail. That's not what this is. What would they have been investigating? Was this guy was what would they have investigated? They would talk to every one of his girlfriends before or his mistresses or whomever before he starts. I mean, I don't. Sure, if you want to do something now, if you want to do something, Devlin, I think, is a little different case too, where the woman's claim she's. I mean, you could do different things, but like, I mean, they can only do so much. If the guys have not been arrested, what are they investigating? Or maybe they did investigate him. We also don't know that.
Right.
And if they did investigate them, they wouldn't have found anything anyway. I knew Matt Riddle as a guy who was married, and I think he has several kids.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know how his wife feels about all this, because that's a whole other situation.
True. I mean, you know, it's gonna be interesting to see what WWE does in regards to like how they handle like an El Ligaro or some of these other people compared to a Jordan Devlin and a Matt Riddle, because I think the upside, and it's horrible to say it this way, but the upside that WWE sees in a Matt Riddle and a Jordan Devlin compared to other guys that are on this list from WWE UK is going to be really interesting on how much leeway and how much bad press they're going to allow themselves to be given, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like we talk about that in the NFL, right? Higher talent, you know, greater risk you would take with them. So I think that's definitely going to be the case.
So, I mean, I guess I'm not sure what else we could really say about Matt Riddle without knowing more information at this point. So, I mean, Right now, the only other thing that people were saying online, which I don't know if you just want to say it's the conspiracy theorist people out there, and maybe this would have not come out if it wasn't because David Starr, but it is interesting the fact that this comes out the day that he's going to premiere his big break on TV.
Yeah.
You know, that's something that, of course, that's, you know, it's awful if this is at all true. It's awful what happened to this woman, but there's also the idea of this is the biggest moment in this guy's life, the night that he's going to premiere, and this story comes out. You know, it's slightly coincidental.
I mean, we don't know, right? And I think that's, you know, I don't know, Corey. This is such a touchy subject, and I don't want to come off as insensitive to this woman if this really happened, right? It's just awful. But yeah, it's very interesting that this is coming out on the night he's going to debut. And also there's, you know, if I will say this, if this is true about, you know, the lawyer putting something saying that this woman had been cyberbullying him or cyber stalking him, and then this comes out, I don't know, and you know what? I don't even know if I want to go there. I don't even know if I want to go there.
You know what?
I don't know. But it just is a really really shitty situation. And if Matt Riddle did this, he's a terrible person. I mean, he's a shitty person anyway for cheating on his wife. I mean, that's definitely there too. That sounds like is pretty clear. But yeah, it's an awful situation all the way around.
Last thing on this though, because you just indirectly brought this up, just remind me what you said in regards to the thing with the lawyer, where if this whole thing with the stalking, if this is going on and if this is true on that end where she's been stalking his family for basically the last 2 years, if you're Matt Riddle and you've just signed this contract with WWE and all this stuff is going on, shouldn't you be smart enough to tell your employer, the WWE, that this is something that might come up, so there's a plan?
How would he know, Corey? That's why he had a lawyer. That's why they took it to court. He did his due. Now again, if he is, this is all under the premise that he didn't do this, right?
Of course.
He did the right steps. He went to the lawyer, and the lawyer went and did. Hey guys, just so you know, this woman's been cyber stalking me, and she might say something accusing me of something I didn't do on the night that I debut at your. He went through the right channels. He went and got a lawyer, and he filed papers, and so I mean, again, I want to make this very, very clear that I am not at all saying he's innocent of doing this. I'm saying it's absolutely possible he did this. But I'm also saying in terms of if he did not, I think he followed the right procedures by going to the lawyer and filing that's what you're supposed to do. You know,
absolutely. So we'll follow this in regards to Matt Riddle, but let's talk about Dave Lagana, because I think that's a really interesting one here. And I guess we could Dave Lagana, and I guess you could almost put the Jim Cornette situation in kind of in the same place here, where it's something that apparently happened more than a decade ago. And, you know, it kind of goes into this whole entire culture that we're in right now of if you do something in the past is going to come back to haunt you. Don't think just because, and if true, if just because you did something in the past, it's going to stay in the past. Just because you send out a racist tweet or you go and you rape somebody or you do something in your past that all of a sudden, because it was years in the past, it's not going to come back later on, and it might cause you to lose your job. You know, and Dave Lagana supposedly is a guy who's well respected in the industry. I mean, he was a head writer on SmackDown. He's one of the key guys within the NWA, NWA Power, which is one of Jay's favorite shows every week, and we wish he comes back at some point. But Dave Lagana, if all of this is true, he's never working in the industry again.
Yeah. And I'm not going to read the whole thing the woman said, but essentially there was a woman who was kind of a roommate, someone who they were helping each other out in LA because she was struggling for money. They were sleeping in the same bed, but it was no sex. So they were just friends. And then she woke up one day and he was, sexually assaulting her. That's what, and that's what she claims. And this is 10 years ago. Doesn't really seem like there'd be a reason for her to make this up, to be quite honest with you. And so he has, NWA has, I don't know if they said they've terminated him or if he's left or mutual.
But I'm pretty sure it's
mutual termination or whatever. So he's gone. And it's something that happened 10 years ago, something that sounds like it's out there, and he's lost his job as a result. And so, I mean, this is where we're going, right? Like, you have to be careful with how you treat what you just, I mean, I don't know. I know that, we've had these cases with Louis C.K. where, one of my favorite comedians of all time and one of my favorite shows of all time. And then he did these crazy sexually disgusting things to women, and his career was essentially ended. And Aziz Ansari had an incident with a woman where, it was kind of, I don't know. It sounds like it was somewhat of a misunderstanding. It doesn't sound like, so he didn't get the same flack. So I don't know. And then we have all these women now accusing all these men of doing these things. And, it's just a really, really tough case. And then Jordan Devlin's thing is different, right? The woman is saying that he physically abused her and has put pictures. So I don't know. But, I'll say this. When women are oftentimes afraid to come out and say stuff because of a lot of reasons, right? A lot of very legitimate reasons. And so generally when one woman comes out, that encourages other women to come out. So this is great that women are coming out and speaking about this and speaking about being sexually assaulted, emotionally abused by men. So it's a great thing. But I think it leaves a lot of us in a spot where we don't know, right? So it's and we're also, not for nothing, we're men, and so we may have a different perspective. Obviously, you don't treat women bad, you don't abuse them, you don't rape them, but it's a really fine line. And yeah, I don't know. It's just a very difficult situation, especially for these women.
And I just want to read this one, and this is of many different people have put out things today, but Ali from AEW, the Bunny as she's known there, she wrote this. For anyone wondering why it's so hard for women to speak out, they run the risk of not getting booked again, being accused of lying, the situation being downplayed, being made to look crazy, etc., etc. Hashtag speaking out. So like you just said, we'll never truly understand as a man what these women are going through and how much that things can change by just speaking out, by saying what this is, and all of a sudden you could lose your career. Yes, you could lose your career because you did this. You could also lose your career by being blacklisted, by them not believing you, or by causing an uproar. It's one of those things where for a lot of these women it's a no-win situation. One, you were abused and destroyed emotionally the first time, and then when you go out there and say this happened, they go and they call you a slut or different awful things, and you relive the whole entire traumatic experience again. And this is great, this hashtag speaking out, but you know what, certain people aren't going to still get that justice that they need. Maybe they'll get the emotional release of actually being able to say what happened out loud, and maybe someone will believe them. But at the same point, a lot of these people for nights on end are going to have to relive this again. A lot of people, just buried these type of things deep down in their soul and said, you know what, this never happened. I wasn't a victim. And then all of a sudden they come out and they say something, and then they all of a sudden they don't realize this, but they relive the whole entire torture again.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you most likely have maybe dealt with some of this stuff as a school counselor, dealing with kids who from different situations who may have opened up to you about certain things over the years.
Yeah.
And you don't realize until afterwards there's a secondary wave of what happens. I mean, like you could speak more on that, but I'm just like things I've heard or read.
Yeah. So I want to read Jordan Devlin's statement first. So again, this woman accused Jordan Devlin of abusing her, said that she has pictures. I think it's an ex of his. So very serious allegations too. So his statement was, I didn't want to address the hurtful allegation made against me, but for the sake of my followers and friends on this platform, I may, for whatever reason, be unsure. I'm going to address this once. The recent allegation made against me is completely and utterly false, and I deny it entirely. This is the case of a malicious personal agenda being executed against me at the back of a very brave telling of true experiences by other women. I completely denounce it. This is all I will say. I am now working on a legal team to decide how to proceed from here. So obviously, all these guys are saying they didn't do it. So that's essentially what that is. Yeah, I mean,
doesn't that sound
like I've
a little bit?
What'd you say?
Maybe like just listening to that, because I hadn't read it beforehand, because I've been doing some other stuff earlier today, setting up for the show. But the way that statement by Jordan Devlin kind of sounded like victim shaming. It was like, yeah, this did, you know what? I'm sure that there are true stories out there, but this didn't, this woman's like, this didn't happen. I'm sure things, it didn't sound like.
But also, he may have done this.
Yeah.
And if he did, he deserves to go to jail. If he didn't do it, then he's pissed.
Sure.
So that's what that statement came off as. So that's what I mean, right? Like we're trying to read into these like we don't know. We have none of us have any idea 100% about any of this. And I think that's where things are. One of the reasons why going to the Black Lives Matter movement has picked up so much steam is because white people saw a black person being murdered in front of them. That is why this has picked up steam. As a black man, I know what happens. I've seen the cops harass my father. Like I know what happens, but that is not what white people necessarily see. But seeing that woke them up to it. With this case with these women, we didn't see it. None of us know. So it's a very, very difficult thing on all sides. And I have trouble defending these guys. I would not defend them at all. But we also have no idea. So it's very tough, very difficult.
And you know what? And one of the things that's come up as a result of this, is the idea of how these women are just treated in general, where they're like, even fans, not even female wrestlers, but the fans, they're basically called, the rats of, who basically hang around the boys and stuff. And that's just you're just demeaning these women to begin with. And that's one of the things that's come out in this whole entire thing, where I think we just have to figure out how we talk to people. I mean, and I'm sure all of us in our own personal life, of course, hopefully none of us have gone to that next step of beating up or raping anybody, but just the idea of how we treat people and the way we say things. I mean, yes, I think that our culture has become a little bit too PC over the years, but the idea that...
I don't. Go ahead.
But, just the idea that...
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I apologize.
But, just the idea of, like, the way that we're treating just the female fans in general when it comes to wrestling has made it almost okay in the minds of wrestling fans and almost male talent in general that they're less than. And I think that's just a mindset that has to change.
I don't think that's here's the thing with that. That's not a wrestling thing. That's a societal thing.
Oh no, absolutely.
I mean, that's way bigger, way, way bigger than wrestling. Because you said, like, the female fans, they call them rats or whatever. But this isn't just fans. These are women's wrestlers who are going through this. The Mia Yim thing, that story from years ago, how she was abused horribly by her ex-boyfriend, who is a pro wrestler. I don't know his name, but I know his stuff's out there. But he was a pro wrestler who abused her for years, right? And so she was a wrestler, a strong woman, and mentally she was strong, but she was abused, and it was a tough situation. So this isn't just a fan who is, even though all women deserve to be treated the same and well, but it's not just that. So to me, it's how oftentimes, unfortunately, women are looked at in society. And also how we've talked about how so many cases of sexual assault that are reported are not taken to court. Men are not arrested for it. So that's a big part of this too. So I don't know.
I mean, I
don't know. And then you can get into so many other layers of this that I think we're kind of, unqualified to talk about. But
well, I mean, we just had this isn't a cheap plug for us, but we just had Big Vito on, and you heard at the end of the episode, his wife was joined, and she put out Noelle Harlow Lagrassi. She put out a thing today, it's where she even has dealt with the past. It was one of the things she wrote. I was called a rat from day one, and I didn't date workers for almost 5 years in my career. I once went to a CCW show and had cheese sticks thrown at me, and rats screamed in my face. CCW said, "What do you expect us to do? Throw them out?" A few shows later, I was punched in the face by a fan. I mean, So it's just like, and then she wrote something else in regards to her own experience in dealing with something, in regards to all the things that are going on today. So, I mean,
Also, for the record, the one thing we also have to take into account that as much as women are now becoming as big of the stars as the men, like Charlotte and Sasha and Bailey and Becky, the four horsewomen, it is still a heavily male dominated business. And so the males have, they're controlling the business. So I think that's another kind of thing underlying a lot of this too, as to why women, it sounds like in general, whether you believe every single one of these accusations or don't, it sounds like there's a history here of women in wrestling not being treated well. And I think a lot of that is based off of how many men are in how much of a male dominated business it is.
now, one of the guys we weren't going to talk about, but AEW just put out a statement about Jimmy Havoc. We wish Jimmy Havoc all the best as he receives treatment and counseling in an effort to overcome the mental health and substance abuse challenges in his life. We are aware of various reports related to Jimmy. We are evaluating his status with our company. We'll address it when he has successfully completed his rehabilitation. So, I mean, they're not getting rid of him, which you could say is right or wrong. And if they're basically sugarcoating it, saying that, he's going into rehab for something else. But, they're at least saying, what, he's not going to be our company right now. We're going to look into this, and we're going to see what's going to happen. So, I mean.
Well, it sounds like also some of the things that were out there on Twitter about him was his mental state, and women would profile incidences of him. Again, I don't really want to get into all of it, but there were a lot of mental health things, it seemed like, and substance abuse surrounded around some of the other things that he did with women. So it sounds like he maybe is in a place where he needs to, get some help. I think the AEW statement is good.
Yeah.
Let him get some help, get him away. You investigate the situation a little bit more, you get more information, and you help him get clean. But when he comes back, you make a determination on, is this guy right for the company? And if not, we have to get rid of him, because they don't, not for nothing, he's not Matt Riddle, right? Like, if he'd be gone, you wouldn't really, it'd be fine. So, this is just a really, really tough thing. But the other thing is, we talk about, this is a sad day for wrestling, or this is a sad day for whatever, right? This has been happening for years. This is history. That is the history of women not being treated well in wrestling. Like, this is history. So it's not a sad day. It's been a sad history.
Absolutely. I mean, and sometimes at some point, they what to say, the chickens come home to roost. All of this bad behavior at some point, it's going to come back to haunt the wrestling industry, and this is that day. And you want to go and say, all right, yeah, that's it. We feel bad for the wrestling industry, but no, these women have dealt with this stuff for years, and even if some of these things aren't true, and we hope for the sake, just in general, because of the sport or the industry that we love, that all of these things aren't true, and for all the people who have had these issues, that that this has helped them come forward and find some sort of emotional release and peace in their lives. But this is a moment in time where you have to understand that these type of actions have happened in the past. This has to be a fresh start in the wrestling world and in the world in general, where these type of behaviors are no longer going to be allowed, and it's just like, you've got to go and just understand that even though this was a male-driven industry at some point, and certain things were just looked at as it just happened, that's the way things are. That's not the way things can be anymore.
And this is it's such a structural thing that I don't even know where you start. We've talked about stuff with Black Lives Matter. There are structural things that you can do. And I think maybe this is a thing where we would need to have a woman on who's involved in that. I don't think we're experts to talk about it. But I also think this starts when, you know, yeah. I'm not gonna say that. I'm actually not gonna say that because I want to be as sensitive to everyone as possible here, and what we're talking about. But I mean, we have to be better to each other. We have to be better to each other, and it's you know, I don't know. This is all a very, very difficult subject.
Yeah, like I said, as much as I wanted to come on today and talk about how cool it was to see Ricky Starks on AEW, that takes a back seat to real life events.
Yeah,
And I don't know if
absolutely.
you want to still even talk about anything else that happened in the week of wrestling since we spoke to everybody on Monday. But this is the story that I think
This
we'll be
is it.
talking about for the next couple of weeks. I
This
mean,
is it.
you know,
So is Riddle gonna be on SmackDown?
I want to say no, but if it's true that it's part of a bigger angle involving AJ Styles, I'm going to go with the WWE is actually going to do the right thing for a change. Vince McMahon is going to actually not going to be. See, Vince McMahon and not being stubborn just sounds like something that never happens.
But we have to remember, and we didn't break this down. We didn't break this statement down about how, and so it's interesting. This guy Andrew Brandt, he does a podcast with this guy Ross Tucker. It's a great show. So Andrew Brandt will analyze a statement from like an NFL team. He's a former president of the Green Bay Packers.
Okay.
So he'll analyze a statement from a team, and then he'll actually break it down in like English language, what they're actually saying. And I'm going to read the part where it says, upon arrest, they will be suspended. Upon conviction, they will be terminated. What does that mean to you, Corey?
We're going to wait and see. As long as you're a huge star, we'll let you get away with as much as possible.
Right? That's what that means to me, or unless they get more evidence. Now, if they get more evidence and a bunch of other women come through and say, like, he's done this, then I think it's over.
So what do you think? Matt Riddle on our team?
No. Now, did they tape SmackDown already, or is this live?
So they tape SmackDown for this week. Next week, SmackDown.
Yeah, so they would have to change. They'd have to change up the whole show. Because I'm sure they wrote this around Riddle, and SmackDown's going to be in about an hour from now. I mean, they'd have to change their whole show around, but it's really hard to put a guy in there who is the WWE face of the speaking out movement, and he's the WWE. I mean, as much as we can say David Starr is a face, and he is, David Starr is an independent wrestler who's not on our TVs every week, that a lot of people don't know who he is. A lot of freaking people know who Matt Riddle is. He was in the UFC. He's been in NXT. He's been a pretty big star. Everybody knows who he is. So you're putting the person who's kind of the face of this speaking out movement, against sexual harassment, sexual assaults, and abuse of women, and you're going to put them on TV on Friday night on Fox.
You know what? Right now it is 7:15 p.m., 45 minutes before the show starts. WWE.com still has for their SmackDown quick hits, and you would think that they would be smart enough to update this. Maybe they're not, but they have Bray Wyatt and the Firehouse Funhouse to make ominous return. AJ Styles rolls out red carpet presentation. Mandy Rose on Miz TV, and Matt Riddle to make his SmackDown debut tonight.
Now I'm not gonna rip them for that, because sometimes like one department doesn't talk to the other. We've seen that like a million times, and Vince can just change the show, and so I'm not gonna rip them for that. I don't. Who knows? Maybe they put that out there, but so I'm not gonna rip them for that. But yeah, I don't know, and they might be thinking about it right up until the time. I just don't know how you have this guy on TV, and he's the face of this movement currently. The face against this movement, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know how they have him out there. I really don't. I think they have to give this some time.
I don't disagree. I mean, I'd like to go back, though, before we move on to other things, I'd like to go back to David Starr for a minute. Just the it's weird because, like I said, we had him on and he seemed like a really good guy. And like if you look back, I don't have the exact tweet because I was looking at this earlier, but when he goes and I understand, and if this isn't true, you know, I understand, it is what it is. But when he's going and saying, basically you have to believe all accusers of anything, like basically the Me Too movement. And then all of a sudden, when it's against him, it's not true. You basically, I understand when it's something against you personally, you've got to defend yourself. He's almost like just saying the opposite of against his own words. So I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, that's whatever, right? Like, I think sometimes as
I mean, like you
people,
have to believe all victims, but when you're the person who's the victim,
yeah, but if he didn't do it, I mean, what's he gonna say? Like, oh well, I did say back then that I mean, what's he gonna say? But I do think we sometimes take this holier than thou stance on a lot of things, right? Like I never try to pretend to be the perfect person. I've made mistakes. That's why I've talked about this book with you, Corey, and with my wife and with my friends. I did a book club, the How to Be an Anti-Racist book. I read that as a black man, thinking, what the hell? Why am I reading? I'm an anti-racist. And then I read stuff in there, stuff that I've done or stuff that I've said, right? It's called assimilation, by the way, for those who care. And so I did stuff that was racist, not even knowing. We can't do this thing where we're all holier than thou over everything. We've all made mistakes. We've all done things. So that's where I think, like you probably shouldn't put that out there, to be honest with you. Yeah. And also he should have put that out there because here's what's not disputed. Him saying to this woman that he raped someone else. That's you could say maybe he did, maybe that we don't know. We do know he was a really bad guy to his girlfriend. That we do know. So it's hard to reconcile him being, and this is what you said about the Me Too movement. I don't have those old tweets. If he was really for that Me Too movement while being a pretty shitty boyfriend, that's, whether it's emotional abuse or whatever, because you can be really, really crappy to a woman and not lay a hand on her.
Sure.
And so
physical abuse they're both abuse.
Yes, right. So that's where I would struggle. That's where I would struggle. And so yeah, we had him on and he was a tremendous guest and he was great to talk to. I tweeted to many of you guys who may listen to our show to listen to the interview, and I know some of you did. And it's tough now looking back on it.
Agreed. Like I said, we could talk about this subject for hours, but let's talk a little, I guess, the silly world of professional wrestling just before we wrap up for the day. Just a couple of quick thoughts. Just quickly on AEW and NXT. We don't have to talk. I'd love to talk more about testing, but just your quick thoughts.
Oh, by the way, with the testing, it does look like so far everybody's negative.
Right. Let's
go. That is
continue testing. Every time they come in.
Well, yeah, this will be the only time they test and then see you. But good night, see you. They're all negative. You're never gonna get it anymore. Yeah, no, it's a mess. Yeah. So the testing we could talk about. What do you want to talk about first, NXT or AEW?
Well, I think the big thing coming out of NXT is that we're gonna have a triple threat match for the North American title, and then 2 weeks later, going up against the second night of Fyter Fest, we're gonna have a unification title match. I mean,
now I'm not gonna put myself over, but I'm gonna put myself over. I did say some type of. Now I said specifically Keith Lee, and who knows what they do, but a Keith Lee Adam Cole match, that'd be the biggest. I don't care about Karrion Kross. That is the biggest match that NXT can have. That's the biggest match they can have. I love Finn Balor too. The biggest stars in NXT are Adam Cole and Keith Lee. And I don't even think it's close. And so that's the biggest match you can have. That's the match that they're setting up to go against Fyter Fest. I think it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting. But a couple of real big shows coming up that I'm excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's interesting though in a couple of factors. One, I understand. I think when we had this conversation initially, you were like, "All right, so he has both titles, and then you go if you have Keith Lee win, then you go on from there." But are you already? Are you? Is it? Are we doing like a Naito situation in New Japan where he's going to have to defend both titles?
Well, hold on.
Tournament
Well,
right
hold
afterwards.
on. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. We're getting way ahead of ourselves. When's the last time the WWE did something like this? I can tell you from what I remember, and I could totally be wrong. I think it was WrestleMania 6. Ultimate War, was it 6? With Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan? When Warrior won the IC title and the world title? This doesn't happen often. A guy winning both titles doesn't happen often. It and now the IC title doesn't mean shit, so now they don't care. But back then it really meant something. So it was a gigantic deal. And I think the North American title probably means more than the IC than the US title. So it'd be a really, really big deal if there was a champ. I don't know if I see that. And I guess you could say Becky. So I take that back. Becky would be the last.
Get a clean finish. I mean, I know it's 2 weeks.
Becky would be the last person. Before that, probably Ultimate Warrior. So basically what I'm saying is this happens so rarely, but is proposed so much. I don't know that we get a clean finish at all. Now, paying off a show where you don't get a clean finish and you're going against AEW might really anger your audience. So I don't know how they're going to do that, but I do think we're putting the cart before the horse because clearly they're planning this out eventually for Karrion Kross to go after the NXT title. So unless they have Adam Cole win both titles and whatever, I think they're going with Karrion Kross here to be the next big challenger.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I do, and I wonder if that's a big enough main event, title versus title, to go and beat AEW on that July 8th show. But the one thing I wanted to talk about, which you're gonna tell me I'm over going crazy about, but we never talk about it. I like Robert Stone as a character. I think he's a nice mid-card character. But I'm slowly seeing things on NXT that are starting to worry me a little bit. And this whole time Robert Stone, puking angle just has the words of the name Vince McMahon all over it. This isn't something that I remember seeing on NXT before they were on USA Network and before, Vince McMahon was paying a lot more attention. I just feel like, am I losing my NXT love? You're still getting the great matches, but that feels like something that I would see on SmackDown.
Corey, I'm about patterns here, but we've talked about this before. You talk about the ratings every week and this every week and that every week. It's about patterns, right? It's one angle that was really stupid. I didn't like it at all. It's kind of goofy. They did the therapy thing with the Undisputed Era. So you could say that's a Vince thing too. But I thought it was funny. I thought it was goofy. So I think we got to wait and see here. Let's wait and see before we start trashing NXT.
I'm not trashing. I'm just saying I would start to look out for if we see more stuff like this.
Oh, what would you put the Undisputed Era thing? Is that a Vince thing? Because then we start talking about what's a Vince thing, what's not a Vince thing. What's a Vince thing, what's not a Vince thing. I don't think Vince has a lot to do with NXT. I think Vince is come on, Corey. Come on. I think Vince's whole thing would be, hey, we need to put a main roster person over, like Charlotte. I think that's his influence. And I think that's where he is. So that I think he is influencing. But he's not influencing the storylines and who goes over, and he doesn't even have time for that. So he's not, oh man, this Robert Stone, we gotta make him puke in the ring, but then the main event storyline he has nothing to do with. That doesn't make sense at all.
I hope you're right, and I hope it was a 1 week thing. It is funny,
But it's not a 1 week thing. They've been doing this with him being a mess. He got beat up by this has been an angle they've been doing for weeks. The puking thing didn't make any sense. And then that match was terrible, dude. She messed up the pin. The match was horrible.
Aaliyah, I don't know why she's on TV.
Well, it's
Don't know why she's
two can play at that game too. Xylee's still
Not really.
developing. She's still developing. She's developing. You know, they're both developing. I don't know. I make nothing of it. I thought it was silly. I don't agree with everything that either show does every week. So that's my thing there.
All right. I'll give them credit. I thought you can tell me, well, this might be a Vince thing too, but I thought the Fandango Chyla Breeze entrance thought was pretty funny. I think the last 2 weeks stuff they've been doing with them has been very funny, and I hope that they stick with the idea of everything before they get in the ring, they'll be goofy. When they get in the ring, they'll be serious act. I actually think they can be a help to some of the newer guys on NXT with, being more of a veterans. But
sure. And they have no tag team, so
yeah,
that's why they need them.
The guys who are terrible with Malcolm Bivens, who I'm hoping doesn't get wasted as just standing there. Hopefully he gets to talk every once in a while. But quickly, AEW, really enjoyed the Ricky Starks debut. And I really enjoyed, I know that you hate the Dark Order, you think it's a waste of time at this point, but I liked that. I know that there was basically no women's wrestling on the show, but that 3-minute segment with the women, I thought was really well done with getting 2 new characters kind of over. Just want to get you.
No, you're talking about 2 different things. You're not talking about the same thing. The little vignette with Sarah J, who's like a gorgeous woman. Jesus. So the vignette with Sarah J was good. And then whatever that woman was, I mean, good God. She's like, oh my God, that scared me. I don't get scared often. But no, it was great. But that was great. Then now she's a part of the Dark Order. That's what I'm talking about, Corey. You're saying I'm not a fan of the Dark Order. That has nothing to do with me not liking the match and trying to get the women over. The Dark Order doesn't get anyone over. No one's over from the Dark Order. So, and I know it's there's no fans, so you can't say, oh, who's over. Dark Order wasn't over before. Certainly they're not. I would be very surprised if they're over now. So yeah,
I like the idea of her joining the Dark Order, but
she just got there. Right. She lost 1 match, and now she's going to join the Dark Order.
Well, the idea that she had all this hype. Highlight package, she lost.
She lost 1 match, and now she's going to join a cult? What sense does that make? Colt Cabana makes sense. He's been losing for a couple of weeks. I get that. The woman lost 1 match.
I think it's an interesting direction. We'll see.
Well, why is it interesting? She lost 1 match.
But you know what? Somebody who's a new character, for some people, maybe not you're going to actually care about her because she's actually in a storyline. They're doing something with her.
They did do something with her. They had her do a vignette and had her lose a match, and they can continue her push and her trying to rise. They could keep that going. She's like 20-something years old. Yes, I'm not gonna. You're gonna care more about her because she's in the Dark Order. Come on, Corey. Let's be serious here. What have they done with the Dark Order that's been good so far?
We're waiting to find out. So Ricky Starks, I thought it was a really cool debut. I think that he has star quality. You saw it at NWA Power. He's going to now have a chance to do longer than 6-minute matches as the TV champion. I thought that we also saw a lot of interesting little moments of we're going to see a heel turn, most likely sooner than later, from Cody, from some of his actions, which I like the idea that we're slowly seeing that. What do you think of Ricky Starks, a guy who you really liked from NXT?
Loved him. I guess it was a one-off originally.
Yep.
And then they liked the match so much that they signed him, and now they're going to build some type of program around him. I think he's great. I think he presents something different from the AEW. He can talk. He's more of a showman than I think like a tremendous worker. I think he's a good worker, but I think he's more of a showman than what AEW has. I think he brings something different. So yeah, I think that was good. We'll see what happens with Cody. I think it's interesting. Again, the Arn Anderson thing, having a playbook. I don't understand. The man's been wrestling for 15 years. I don't even know why he needs a coach. But yeah, we'll see with Cody. I do think, and others have pointed this out, they have to be careful with Cody because kind of like we talked about with Sasha and Bailey, how they were wrestling Tegan Nox and Sashi Blackheart. By the way, we didn't talk about that. A very good main event. I really enjoyed that match. The women worked really hard, and it was a fun. You talk about like a good women's match, like whatever. I think Bailey and Sasha just need to be the women's tag team champions. Like I think they just need to be the champions because they're just so much better than most of the main roster. Anyhow, that was a fun match. But we talked about how them going against those women for the tag team titles, it kind of a passer through. Like there's no way they're going to win because obviously the Iconics is where that feud is eventually going. And same thing with Ricky Starks and Marquette. Like there's no way these people are going to win the belt because we know they're setting up for Hager. So sometimes that could be. And the other thing is he doesn't need to defend the title every week. I think that's going to be a little bit too much. Have a number one contenders match to see. They had a lot of tag matches last week. I think they had too many tag matches, and some of them didn't really mean anything. Have a number one contenders match for the TV title next week. Have a, do a little bit more. They now have a singles title on their television show. Make that mean something instead of having, randos, randos there. Corey just sent me a little message here. Jack Gallagher has been released. Is there any information as to why he was released? I'm going to try to look on Twitter.
Well, he's one of the guys who apparently was the allegations. He's gone. PW inside.
But then Matt Riddle's going to be on TV.
Oh, one of them is a star. One of them they believe is a star. One of them they don't. Like you said, if you're a first-round pick, you get a lot more opportunities. If you're a seventh-round pick who's just trying to hold off your spot.
Yeah. So a woman accused him of inappropriate behavior in 2014. Yeah, and now he's gone.
And we apologize, guys. I mean, this is a developing story as we're on the air. As more information we get, we're gonna, if we see it, as long as we're on right now, we'll continue to, update.
Listen, you are 100% right. Yeah, you're 100% right. And I'm reading some of this that the woman said about him on Twitter, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but again, she's accusing him of sexually assaulting her in 2014, and now he's gone. And Matt Riddle might be on our TV in about 27 minutes. So, it's very, very interesting how WWE is going to handle all this. Yeah. And is it gonna and what happens? Right now we got Matt Riddle, who's not a star. What happens if Roman Reigns or AJ Styles or someone like that is accused of this?
It's good. I think they'll.
This is gonna just present, and I'm not saying they have. I'm not saying at all, but let's just say a big star. This is gonna present a whole heap of problems to a company that is struggling with the coronavirus testing, struggling with the ratings, struggling with creative. Now they're struggling with all these accusations. They're in trouble.
Agreed. Just putting out here, Anthem statement on allegations against Impact Wrestling talent. Regards to allegations against over the last 24 hours about our talent, Impact talents including Joey Ryan and David Crisp, Impact Wrestling partner company Anthem, issued the following statement. Is it a core value of Anthem's organization that we conduct our business with respect and integrity, providing a safe and secure work environment for our employees and performers? We are following carefully and various allegations being made through social media and are reviewing all incidents involving Impact Wrestling talent and personnel and determine an appropriate course of action. I think, and I know that we don't usually talk about Impact very much on this program, even when they do something good, but I think Impact's in a really weird position on this, where you basically gave your biggest, star at the time, Blanchard, the title when there was massive, speculation of her being, super racist against female athletes. And she, and I know that there's talk that she may be leaving the company now anyway because of other things. But you're keeping her around, and then now you're going to take seriously, attacks against, maybe actually Dave Christ and Joey Ryan. So I mean, are they going to give as much leeway to the two of them as they did to Blanchard?
Tessa Blanchard. Well, one, the Blanchard thing is different. Again, I am black and I take racism very seriously, but it's different someone saying something to me than someone who is sexually assaulting me, right? It is two different things. So I don't know. Apparently this woman also told, I think she was a performer, and she told the company she worked for that they were the independent company and they didn't do anything. And she actually said she was more upset about that company because they didn't do anything. I don't know. The one thing that I think we're seeing is that this is pervasive. This is all over the sports. This is Impact, AEW, WWE, NXT. This is in progress. This is over in the UK, right? This is all over. Different countries, different states. This is pervasive. How women are it seems are being treated in pro wrestling. And I don't know what you do about that. I really don't. But something certainly needs to be done because this is really, shit's hitting the fan. Shit's really hitting the fan. And Corey, I mean, how many guys have been accused now of some type of, abuse of a woman? I mean, there's a lot of freaking guys on this list. It's a lot of guys.
Who were released by the WWE, as on this list. It's freaking crazy.
So, and I don't see this stopping. I don't see this stopping at all. Maybe on Monday we're gonna have to do a big show because someone gets released. Like I would not be surprised at all. So we'll keep you guys updated. Corey's been really on top of this on Twitter and keeping you guys informed about what's going on. We'll see. Obviously, we're taping this show now. By the time you guys listen to this, Riddle would have already been on SmackDown or not been on SmackDown, or he would have been attacked in a hit and run accident like they did with Hardy. I don't know what they're gonna do, but we'll see. So
was Elias who got run over? It was Matt Riddle.
Yeah, exactly. So not to make light of it, but what are you gonna do? So we'll see what happens. But I think this is just the beginning. Just the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I guess on that note, hard way to transition from that one, but I think we covered a lot of interesting stuff. Let's wrap this bad boy up. I guess you could follow us at WorkShootPod. Please follow the Facebook group where we have a lot of lively discussions, and I'm sure this will be one of many, over the next couple of days and weeks ahead. If you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, 5 stars, or even if not 5 stars, we will be sure to read it on the air. So anywhere where you listen to podcasts, please, rate, review, and subscribe. We do appreciate it. And, of course, check out our sister podcast, You Don't Know Jackie. The Honorable Jason Brooks will be joining us on an episode, I believe either coming up this week or in the very near future, on the hit HBO series Insecure. It was a very lively discussion with the return of the original Jackie Mello, firecracker that she is. But Jason, the final word as always is yours.
I think we're done here. See ya.